Hi everyone, I'm Christine from Auckland Saddle Fit. Hope you haven't gone mad yet from this time in quarantine. Today we're going to go over part 2 of fitting the rider to the saddle. So this is the second of our 3-part series, and in part 1 I had left you when we discussed how do we start to ascertain the right size of saddle I need, and we discussed that your femur length gave you a rough guideline. Obviously you've got to take into account our bums and thighs to finish that off as well, and there are features of the saddles that can give us more room or less room. Today what we're going to go over is our seat width, talk about the foaming, cantles, how they work for support or creating space. We're going to talk about the twist and the skirt, particularly for men and women, and the stirrup bars. So just before I go into that, what I did want to quickly touch on is this is all stuff as a saddle fitter that we look at when the rider is in motion, and when they first get on we're having a bit of a look at positions as well, and how your riding position is influenced by a saddle that doesn't fit you. Sometimes you can compromise, other times you shouldn't be compromising, and this is particularly for the case if you're looking at a second-hand or new to you saddle, or you're looking at purchasing a new saddle. You should know what your physical requirements are to keep you comfortable and to keep the health of your body going. One of the things I would also like to really push home is this is particularly important for children. So children spend a lot of time when they're learning to ride desperately trying to please their coaches, instructors, parents, trying to ride in the correct position, and they can't do that if the saddle isn't right for them or if the balance of the saddle is wrong. And to be fair to adults, if the balance of your saddle is wrong, the way these things fit, the features in the saddles won't work as well for you either. But for children, what we do know is that that range of motion through the spine finishes at 9, usually from there we get progressively stiffer. But the growth of the vertebrae is still going for girls up until we're about 14. For boys it grows for slightly longer, about 17 or 18 based on genetics. But what we are starting to see now is that we do have a lot of back problems and hip problems from riders who haven't been riding in a good saddle for their shape or to help with their balance as young children. So please just bear that in mind if you have kids riding. Okay, so to start with we're going to talk about seat width. So our seat width refers to the widest part in the saddle, which is where our seat bones go. When you're having a look at your saddle, do remember that there's often a bit of a curve as that seat falls off. This is not where you want your seat bones to be. Your seat bones are designed to sit in the middle of that wide area and be nice and comfortable. If you are thinking about it from a saddle point of view, when you are sitting in your saddle, the easiest way to locate those seat bones are if you've got a quiet horse, sit on your hands, jiggle your bum around just a little bit, and there's usually some sharp bits in there that you can feel on your hands. Now those are your seat bones. When we're sitting on the saddle, you want to feel that they're nicely supported underneath you, and they're not feeling like you're sitting on something sharp or falling off the edge of the seat. If your saddle seat is too narrow, it's uncomfortable and you will be tense, and there is nothing that we can do to really change that. Saddle width is really a comfort, personal preference. It doesn't matter if you've got some, shall we call them, extra quarantine curves that hang off the edge of the saddle. So long as you're not feeling any pressure from that, then you'll be nice and comfortable. What we do know between men and women and the preference to not even the width but the way that the foam sits in the seat is that when we go back to our lovely picture, men have got much narrower, not only through the pubic arch, but their seat bones are narrower than women, so their requirements are slightly different. When we talk about the amount of latex needed in a seat, what we know is that men have longer tailbones, so they can often prefer a bit more of a scoop or sort of less underneath them than a woman who will require a little bit more extra support in that seat just to help us balance with the way our pelvis is shaped. In our saddles, one of the things that does create a little bit more room or gives us more support is the angle of the cantle. This is a personal preference, really depends on your discipline. More of an open cantle or a flatter cantle will create more space, so you can get away with a slightly smaller seat. Also for horses that are doing a lot of jumping, ideally more on a flat surface, or if you are an eventer, having a flat seat just means that if something goes wrong, you've got a bit more area to kind of catch you before you get popped off the back of the cantle. In a dressage saddle, what you might be looking for is more of an upright shape. So the more support you have behind you, the more that you can be locked into your saddle. If you aren't blessed with a core of steel, some of us do need a little bit more support. So not only are you talking about the blocks, but looking at the back of the cantle, the shape here helps. Also, a wider cantle is often quite preferable for a wider bum, because if you're a little bit vain from the back, it covers a little bit more of the spillage. Some women like to have a smaller petite saddle, particularly if they're a small frame, which is just really so that it doesn't look like there is a lot of saddle there. But the preference for support really comes down to the shape cantle that works for you and the discipline. When we are talking about the twist, now again, remember when we're looking at our saddle, the waist is the seam, the twist is the part that our thigh starts to make contact on. The only real relevance when we are looking at the seam through here on the waist is the relevance of, in regards to women having a wider pubic arch, we do not want that seam to sit in our uncomfortable parts, because those seams do rub. So women do better to have wider seaming. And what that comes down to again is that when we are talking about the twist and comfort for women, the top of the twist needs to be round to support that pubic arch for us. Once we have got some nice support through the front, it can come down and be triangular to match the shape of our pelvis and our legs, the way they hang. So things that are going to influence the way that this twist feels to the rider is going to be the amount of leather they have underneath. So these skirts can be different shapes, the feeling of your stirrups, where they sit in relation to where your legs are, the amount of leather, so whether it's a dual flap or a mono flap. You can find the amount of girthing that you've got underneath your leg can make a difference, whether you have got normal stirrup leathers or you've got some wethers. There's lots of little things that can make a difference to the saddle, not to mention the things that we start to put underneath them. So different pads and saddle blankets, the more that we put under a saddle is really going to affect the way that that twist feels for the rider. When we're talking about stirrup bars, which is something a lot of people don't take into account, but again, as a saddle fitter, this has quite an influence on the way that your saddle is going to fit. Stirrup bars work to let your legs hang down. So they are a pendulum. They are what we balance on when we are riding. The easiest way to look at this, when you are sitting on your saddle in the position that you want to be riding in or that you need your most balance in, your stirrup irons ideally are sitting in line roughly with the ball of your feet. So this means not only if you lose your stirrup in motion, they're actually in a nice place for you to grab again, but what it means is this is where the weight will be balanced through the saddle. And if it is not in a position that you need it to be in, you will not be strong in your position. So if I was somebody and my saddle position was back here, to get that shoulder hip heel line, my stirrup is too far forward. So to balance in that, I would have to push my leg forward to find that pendulum point. So there are lots of things that might feel right to you, but your saddle fitter might be able to look at and say, actually this isn't ideal. Little things to take note of too is that your stirrup bar position in a jump saddle is quite far forward, because that's where your position needs to be, whereas your dressage saddle is a lot further back because we need to have a longer line. So it is important, if you're looking at saddles and things that fit for you, that you understand what the purpose of the saddle that you're choosing is designed for. Just a final note as well, on the twist. One of the things that we do tend to find, if that twist is too narrow for women, you will get dropped forward. You'll often get a little bit of chafing. Again, this can cause urinary issues, infections for women, and a lot of pain and bruising through that pubic area. If your twist is too wide, and this is something that can happen, particularly with more petite women, what we tend to find is it's the bulk underneath the thigh that pushes your legs out. So you get really tight through your hip flexors. And the easy way to know if it's a little bit questionable is when you're sitting in your saddle. If you're sitting in a saddle where the twist is really good for you, you will find that it's easy to keep your leg on. If you're sitting in a saddle where that twist is a little bit wide for you, what you'll find is that when you sit in that saddle, your legs actually want to start angling out and your knees and your toes point out. I hope that helps. We'll have a little bit more information going into the next session to finish off with some features. Happy riding, everyone.